The evening air in downtown Portland carried the crisp scent of autumn leaves and the distant promise of rain, weaving a tapestry of seasonal nostalgia that matched the city's quiet hum. David Harrison sat alone at a sidewalk table outside Café Bellecourt, watching the world settle into its familiar rhythm of evening commuters and early diners. At 62, he had grown to treasure these gentle pauses between the clamor of boardrooms and the relentless pulse of Harrison Industries. Tonight, he was a man in the shadows of his own life, momentarily freed from the weight of decisions and deadlines. A half-finished plate of pasta arbia sat before him, its cooling sauce a testament to his faltering appetite. He'd grown weary of business dinners and the dull ache of grief that lingered like a distant echo. Patricia had been gone for 2 years now, her absence still sharp enough to slice through evenings like this. The Rolex on his wrist, a gift from her on their 25th anniversary, ticked softly, a reminder of time's relentless push and the gentle touch of memory. The board meeting wasn't until tomorrow morning, and his hotel room felt like an empty echo chamber he wasn't ready to face. Instead, he lingered here, absorbing the dance of life along the busy street. It was in that fleeting stillness that he noticed her. A young woman with careful steps and a baby held close against the evening chill. She paused near the cafe entrance, eyes scanning the diners with a mixture of hope and hesitation that felt heartbreakingly familiar. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her clothes clean but worn by the weight of circumstances. In her posture, David saw quiet desperation, tempered by an unmistakable dignity. Their eyes met for a moment, and in that brief connection, he glimpsed not just need, but a fierce intelligence and a quiet strength. With measured steps, she approached his table and stopped at a respectful distance. "Excuse me, sir?" she said softly, her voice both timid and resolute. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I noticed you weren't finishing your meal. May I have your leftovers?" The question lingered in the cool night air. David had been asked for money countless times before, but never quite like this. There was no manipulation in her words, no aggression, only honest need, laid bare in the simplest of requests. He studied her face, seeing the exhaustion that only sleepless nights with a young child can bring. She couldn't have been more than 25, yet she carried the weight of something far beyond her years. "Of course," David said, his chair scraping back as he rose. "Please, would you like to sit down?" She hesitated. "I don't want to intrude on your evening." "You're not intruding," he replied gently. "I was just finishing up anyway. Please." She settled carefully into the chair across from him, adjusting the baby with the practiced ease of a mother who had long ago learned how to cradle comfort and uncertainty at once. The infant, perhaps 4 months old, peeked out from a hand-knitted blanket, tiny fingers occasionally breaking free to grasp at the cooling air. "I'm David," he said, signaling the waiter. "Christina," she replied softly. "And this is Lily." When the waiter arrived, David ordered another plate of pasta along with bread and tea. "The food here is excellent," he explained gently. "You shouldn't have to settle for leftovers." Tears welled in Christina's eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. "You don't have to do that. I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant," David interrupted softly, his tone warm. "But I'd like to buy you dinner, if you'll allow me." As they waited for the food, Christina shared pieces of her story, words tumbling out like a fragile confession. She had come to Portland 6 months ago, running from an abusive relationship and seeking safety for herself and her child. She'd managed to find work at a diner, but the hours were unpredictable and childcare a luxury she could rarely afford. 2 weeks ago, the diner closed suddenly, leaving her adrift in a city she barely knew. She had been staying at a women's shelter, she explained, her voice tender as she rocked Lily gently in her arms. But the shelter's resources were limited, and there was a waiting list for longer-term housing. Tomorrow, she had a job interview at a downtown hotel. Housekeeping. It wasn't much, she said, but it was a start. David listened, recognizing the quiet bravery it took to share such raw truths with a stranger. He thought of his daughter, Sarah, now 35 and living in Seattle with her own family. What if Sarah had ever found herself in such desperate circumstances? What if this was her? And when Christina's meal arrived, she ate slowly, savoring each bite while always keeping one hand free to soothe Lily. David watched her and found himself thinking of the countless dinners he'd sat through, meals that had become hollow rituals of business and status. None had felt as meaningful as this simple act of sharing. "How old is Lily?" he asked softly. 4 months next week, Christina replied, her expression softening as she looked at her daughter. "She's been such a good baby through all of this. Sometimes I think she understands that we're in this together." David smiled, warmed by the quiet devotion in her words. "Babies are far more perceptive than we realize," he said. "My daughter was the same way when she was small. She always seemed to know when Patricia and I needed her patience, even before she could speak." "You have a daughter?" Christina asked, curiosity flickering through her tired eyes. "Sarah," David said, pulling out his phone and scrolling to a recent photo of his granddaughter's school play. "She has 2 children of her own now, 8 and 10. Time, it moves so quickly." Christina looked at the photo and smiled, a fleeting expression of joy that brightened her weary face. In the soft glow of the cafe's lights, David realized that sometimes the most profound connections come not from shared pasts, but from shared humanity. 2 strangers, one fleeting evening, and the simple act of caring. One day you're worried about teething and sleepless nights, and the next you're watching them graduate from college. The thought made David smile as he and Christina continued to talk, their quiet conversation unfolding like a balm against the deepening night. Christina shared her dreams of finishing her nursing degree someday, of giving Lily the kind of stability she'd never known herself. David listened, offering small words of encouragement, and found himself opening up in return, telling her about Patricia and the foundation they had built together, a mission born from their own early struggles. "Patricia always believed that everyone deserves a second chance," he said, "and that circumstances don't define who we are." As the cafe began to wind down, the last of the evening's patrons drifting away and the glow of the streetlights softening the edges of the night, David made a decision that felt both spontaneous and inevitable. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, turning it over to write something on the back. "Christina," he said, holding it out to her, "I want you to call this number tomorrow morning. Ask for Helen Martinez. She's the director of our family assistance program." Christina took the card, her fingers trembling slightly as she read the simple, block-lettered note. "I don't understand," she said softly, her voice thin and uncertain. "The Harrison Foundation," David explained gently. "We provide emergency support for families in transition. Temporary housing assistance, childcare vouchers, job placement services. It's what we do." For a moment, Christina just stared at the card, her eyes wide and shimmering with unspoken emotion. "But why?" she asked, her voice breaking. "You don't even know me." David was quiet, watching as Lily stirred in her mother's arms, blinking at the world with the unfocused wonder of infancy. "Because," he said finally, his voice low and sure, 35 years ago, my wife and I were just like you. We had big dreams but no money, and Sarah was just a baby. A stranger stepped in when we needed it most, not just with money, but with opportunity and dignity." He paused, thinking of Mr. Kowalski, the man who had seen something in him he hadn't yet recognized in himself, the man who had offered not just a job but a lifeline. "He taught me that success isn't just about what you achieve," David continued, his eyes gentle, "but about what you make possible for others." Christina's tears fell freely then, silent rivulets of relief and gratitude. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll call Helen tomorrow," David said softly. "Say you'll let us help you get back on your feet." "I will," Christina said, her voice breaking but sure. "Thank you." As they rose from the table, David watched Christina gather her things, her movements careful and deliberate, her attention always returning to Lily's comfort. There was something profoundly beautiful in the way she balanced the weight of her child and her hopes. "Christina," he said as she stood to leave. "That job interview tomorrow? What time is it?" 10 o'clock at the Marriott downtown, she replied. David smiled, the spark of an idea already forming in his mind. "Tom Bradley is the general manager there," he said. "He's an old friend. I'll give him a call tonight, not to guarantee anything," he added quickly, seeing her look of worry, "but to make sure they see what I saw tonight. Someone with character and determination." 6 months later, David received a letter at his office, handwritten and careful, the kind of letter that feels like a window into a person's soul. Christina had gotten the hotel job, she wrote, and with the foundation's help, she had moved into a small apartment near Lily's daycare. She was taking evening classes, inching closer to her nursing degree with each passing week. She'd enclosed a photograph of Lily, now sitting up, chubby-cheeked and smiling wide at the camera, her tiny hands outstretched as if she already knew she was safe. "Mr. Harrison," the letter read in neat looping script, "I think about that evening often. You showed me that asking for help isn't shameful and that accepting kindness isn't weakness. But mostly you showed me that there are still people in the world who see others as family, not strangers. I hope someday I can pass on what you gave me. Not just the practical help, but the reminder that we're all connected, that we all matter." David folded the letter carefully, slipping it into his desk drawer beside the photograph of Patricia that he still kept there. Her smile as constant and comforting as the evening air. He thought about that night outside the cafe, how a simple request for leftovers had blossomed into something so much more. It was a quiet testament to the profound truth Patricia had always known, that the most meaningful moments often arrive unannounced, disguised as chance encounters, and that the chance to help another was, in the end, a gift to oneself. That night, David called Sarah in Seattle. "I've been thinking about your mother's favorite saying," he told her, his voice soft but certain, "about how everyone deserves a second chance." "What about it, Dad?" Sarah asked, her voice warm with the comfort of distance closed by a phone call. "I think she would have added something to that," David said, glancing out his office window at the city lights below. "I think she would have said that sometimes giving someone else a second chance gives you one too." As he set the phone down, David reflected on the truth of those words, the way small moments can ripple outward, touching lives in ways we can't always see. A young mother's courage in asking for help, an old man's recognition of his own youth and her quiet desperation, and the simple, miraculous fact that kindness, freely given, binds us together across the divides of circumstance. Sometimes, he realized, what appears to be charity is actually grace, offered and received in equal measure. A reminder that we're all more alike than we think, and that no one is ever truly alone, as long as we remain open to the possibility of connection. Outside his office, the evening air still carried the scent of autumn and the gentle promise of rain. But now, it also carried the memory of that conversation on a quiet night in Portland. A conversation that had changed 2 lives, one small act of kindness at a time.